This is a special lecture. Most of you are third years, yes? No, maybe. Then if you were to do animation next year, which I would normally have taught, you would have, as part of your first lecture in animation, you would have received a lecture on storytelling. Something that I think we could actually move down undergraduate, but that's the remaining colleagues' problem. Because storytelling is something which you are going to do if you're going to be developing multimedia stuff, because a lot of multimedia stuff out there are entertainment products, such as games or video, movies and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about storytelling, and then next year whoever's going to present animation may or may not skip this part, because you now already know. Okay. Right. So as I mentioned, multimedia products for entertainment usually have stories. What does a story need? A story needs characters. A story is typically character-driven. I mean, if you're just telling a story about the road in the middle of nowhere, then nothing is happening. Okay, maybe it's going to be some sort of art film, but mostly you will require characters to tell stories. Okay. But here's the thing that many people don't know. You'd think a story is about what is happening, but it's not really. It's about the people and how they react to what is happening. So the best stories focus on the people and not on the actual events. Even though the events are important, the characters are the real thing you need to worry about. Okay, so how do you create a character? Because we're working with multimedia, we have animation, we have special effects in video and all sorts of things to work with, so we can create anything that we can imagine to be a character. Okay, doesn't matter what the character is or what the character looks like, it has to be a believable character. So if you think about the magic carpet in Aladdin, okay, you can see immediately that this is a living thing. It has little hands, it has little human movements. Okay, so as long as it is believable, it is a character. Okay. You have to build your character using some building blocks. The first part of the character you need to worry about is the role that the character is going to play in the story. This role is called an archetype. It is also universal types of characters. But you do not wish to build your character based on a stereotype, because stereotypes are unfair and oversimplifies views on specific groups of people. So you're not going to build a character based on the fact that you believe that blonde girls are stupid. Okay, you're rather going to base a character on the role they're going to play in the story. Is it going to be a hero? Is it going to be a shadow, which is a villain, or something like that? Okay, so let's look at some archetypes, the basic ones. I'm going to use Lord of the Rings as my example, because I mean everybody hopefully has seen Lord of the Rings, or read it at least. Look at my pictures as well while we're doing it. Okay. We have that girl who's there for no reason whatsoever. And we have Treebeard that's also there for no reason whatsoever. I don't know why that's there. I think this was to demonstrate that animation isn't only for kids. Okay, but that's part of the animation lecture. Let's talk about the storytelling situation that we have here. Usually, we have the hero. It starts off being Frodo because, oh, poor Frodo has the burden and the ring and the thing and whatever. Later on, Aragorn comes back to the front. He's the more typical knight in shining armor kind of hero. But the point of the matter is, the role they play in the story is to be heroes. Okay, let's see if I have a Frodo. There's Frodo. Doughy-eyed and ready to cry. Your hero needs a mentor. Because usually your hero at the start is just stumbling around in the dark. They've been thrown into the deep end. What do they do now? And usually there's a mentor character, somebody who provides advice, somebody who knows more about the situation than the hero does at that point. Now the obvious choice in Lord of the Rings would be Gandalf. Okay, at some point, spoiler alert, they lose their mentor, and then, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And then they have to actually start standing up for themselves, and then the mentor comes back and everybody's happy and things continue. Okay. The Threshold Guardian is some character who is standing between the hero and his goals. So it's sort of you have to defeat or get past this guardian in order to continue on the journey. This is the first challenge that the hero receives. Like, sorry, if you can't do this, you won't be able to do the end game thing. Okay, so Threshold Guardian in Lord of the Rings could be the Balrog. Okay, so they defeat or push him down a hole and whatever, and then finally they can continue on their journey. Okay. The Herald is the person spewing prophecies. Okay. Galadriel in Lord of the Rings is always there whispering into Frodo's ear about this or that and this or that and what's going on. This is going to happen in the future, but if you choose wisely, this could happen instead, or some sort of thing. Okay, Dumbledore in Harry Potter could be that as well as a mentor. Okay, and Elrond as well. You remember that whole spiel where Aragorn wants to marry the elf lady, and he's all, no, but she's going to stay young, and you're going to get old, and it's not going to work, and then, spewing prophecies. That's the Herald. Okay, it's a John the Baptist type of character. Okay, you have the Shapeshifter. This is somebody whose role changes throughout the story. Notice, I haven't said this before, but some characters can embody many of these archetypes. They don't have to be just one. So the Shapeshifter in Lord of the Rings would be Gollum. Okay, at one point he is evil and disgusting, and at another point he is friendly and wants to help the filthy hobbitses. Okay, so he keeps changing. Obviously, he has that schizophrenia thing happening as well, so he's shape-shifting like that. Saruman, at first, is all noble and wise, and oh my goodness, if Gandalf asks advice from him, then he must be like Super Gandalf, and suddenly he decides, I'm going to be Sauron from Mass Effect and just destroy everything. So this is Gollum being nice. This is Saruman being nice. This is Saruman being nice. Okay. The trickster, that's somebody who causes trouble for no apparent reason. Somebody who just has to touch the red button when it clearly says don't touch this button. That would be Gollum, okay, as well. And Pippin and Merry. Pippin and Merry are the perfect tricksters. Okay, so the thing that comes to mind most clearly is where Pippin Peters with the skeleton and falls down the hole, and then this war and ogres and all kinds of things. Yes, and the mentor obviously being very unhappy with that situation. Finally, the shadow is the antithesis of the hero. So it could be Sauron, who is the big bad, or Saruman, who is the medium bad. Okay, Saruman can also be seen as a threshold guardian, because they have to get past Saruman before they get to Sauron. Okay, so this is Sauron at the height of his power, wearing jewelry. This is Sauron not happy and looking for his jewelry. Okay. Here's some descriptions that I talked about while I was going through the pictures. Protagonist would be the hero. This is the one who takes on the quest. The quest is the situation that needs to be solved. The mentor guides the hero. The threshold guardian guards the turning point. The herald will announce or predict events to come. Shapeshifter changes between the different archetypes. The trickster is mischievous and a troublemaker. The shadow is the antagonist. Somebody who doesn't want the hero to succeed because insert reasonable reason here. Okay, so an archetype explains the character's role in the story. Now, Lord of the Rings is quite simple and it's very clear. Okay, but then you look at movies like The Matrix, also very clear, I think. It doesn't have to be a fantasy movie, it can be just a normal romantic comedy. And you might see the same sort of archetypes appearing in these kind of movies.
So,
yes.
With the trickster, isn't he also like someone who can like speak like his mind? You know, because he's always like tricking around, so no one takes him serious, and because no one takes him serious, he can.
He could be a comedy relief character. Yeah, he could be a guy who nobody listens to because he's always wrong, but then he turns out to be right. For example, Gollum. You don't think Gollum is going to be important, he's just this weird thing. And then suddenly at the end, spoiler alert again, he kind of, you know, solves the whole problem by himself. Okay. Eating all Frodo's finger in, you know, at the same time. That was gross. Okay, so once you've decided on an archetype or a set of archetypes for a character, you're going to give that character a basic personality. Okay. There's a very nice set of personalities that you can look at. I don't know if we have internet access here. Let's quickly see. Okay. You can see that there, and just find a nice little summary of all of this stuff. Okay. You can see there's a bunch of different personality types based on introversion, extroversion, all kinds of things. Okay, so you can look at these. These are not cast in stone. People's personalities change over time, especially in terms of the story event happens and then the character suddenly becomes bitter and then his personality changes, things like that. But you can use these as a nice foundation. You could even try and figure out your own personality using this thing and maybe see if it matches with what you think about yourself. Okay, so there are 16 basic personality types that you can build on. This only lays the groundwork of the character. Your character is not going to be some cookie-cutter, obvious character. It's going to have his own life. It's going to be different. It's going to be alive. Okay, so you choose archetypes and personalities to define the basic foundation, but then you grow that character into something unique based on that character's history that you decided upon, based on some personality quirks that you put in, based on where the character finds themselves, what is happening over time, and what is happening in terms of the story. Okay. You will finalize the design by injecting your own observations about how people function. You're going to sit on a bench somewhere with your notebook, and you're going to be people spying. Okay, you're going to be looking at, what is that guy doing? Why is he walking like that? And you're going to write some notes. What's that guy doing? Oh, he's... Okay, okay? So pay attention how real people behave and try and incorporate that into some of the characters. Note one thing. Every single character in a story believes that they are sane and reasonable. If a character in a story goes, I'm evil, so I want to take over the world, then that's a bad character. Nobody wants to do evil. Everybody thinks they're doing something good. So, Jafar in Aladdin, for example, he wants to be the Sultan because he thinks he can rule Agrabah better than the current doddering old fool can do. So he has all these schemes to do that, but he thinks he's doing the right thing. Yes, he has the whole evil villain thing going for him. Okay, Disney villains are a bit more clear than a typical... Think of your favorite TV show, one of the modern ones, where it's grey morality and you're not sure if this guy is the hero or this guy is the villain. It's because these people think what they're doing is right, or at least what they're doing is sane and reasonable. Okay. Also, in a story, each character will see themselves as the main character. In my personal story, I am the PC and all of you are the NPCs. Okay, and you have a similar view of me. I'm just an NPC in your little world. Okay? But the key to good character design is honesty. If you write your character and the character grows and suddenly your character does something that doesn't fit with what you've grown, then you're being dishonest. Okay? So, at home, you can watch your favorite movies, try and identify the foundational archetypes and personality types for the characters. Try and watch something that's not too obvious. I mean, a Disney film is very easy. Try watching a Pixar film instead. Try and identify the foundations. Okay? As the story progresses, think about a specific character and decide if they're acting honestly with those foundations in place. Okay? Something cool that you can do at home. Okay, let's talk about the story itself. The definition for it, at least from one school of thought's point of view. Stephen King belongs to that school of thought. Much of my information is from his book on writing, which you should read because it's great. Okay? The narrative for a story is a sequence of events. Event 1, Event 2, Event 3, copy-paste all together, stick them all into a timeline, and there's a story. It moves one or more characters in a situation, that's the starting point, towards a change in the situation, or a resolution of it, or an affirmation that the situation will not change. Those are the three types of endings you can have. Something changes, or the whole problem is solved, or this problem cannot be solved. If you think of a movie like Requiem for a Dream, who's seen that? Okay, that kind of ending there is an affirmation that the situation will not change. Okay, and that's kind of depressing. Yeah, so you can pick up your favorite book or watch your favorite movie and try and figure out what kind of ending they were going for. Usually the crowd pleaser ending will be solving the issue and there's no loose ends and everybody's happy and goes home and drinks tea and whatever. Okay, but sometimes something changes and they have to do it all again, or the movie shows you, most horror movies do this. They show you that, sorry, they're trapped. They can't fix this problem. Okay. Every single person here has a story to tell. They're like little bugs lying in your core, and they want to come out, to burrow their way out through your writing powers. Okay? Why do people do storytelling? Because it's humanity's response to the mysteries of the universe and the human condition. Why does the universe work like this? What if it worked like that? And then you write a story about it. What if you put that person in a situation like that? How would they deal with it? Maybe that will help me deal with a similar situation. Or, I wonder what's beyond our galaxy, apart from what the scientists are saying. Maybe there's a giant brain-eating space being, and then you write a story about that. Not all of it has to be science fiction, obviously. Maybe you're having girl trouble or boy trouble. Then you write a romantic comedy, and maybe it solves something for you. Maybe you get an idea from it. Okay. Stories were around as long as humans were around. So, insert human, insert story. Stories often evolve into complex myths and legends. Have you even read some of the Greek myths? Like properly went back and read some of them. It is crazy. Okay? Most of the movies and books and whatever based on the Greek myths are severely diluted because these people just went all out. This guy does that with that guy, and then this happens, and it's crazy. Okay? Stories do not only teach you things. A story, for example, I want to tell people about a specific philosophy of mine. If I go to those people and I say, this is my philosophy, and they're going to say, screw you, this is not right, you can't do this, blah. But if you do it through a story, not that you're supposed to use stories as propaganda, but you gently introduce people to this philosophy of yours through a story, then they understand, and then they may still disagree, of course. Okay, but it's a nice way to teach people or to get information across without being a lecturer, like myself. Even seemingly frivolous stories can have great meaning. The other day I was watching Adventure Time. And obviously it's silly and random and crazy. But then just one little event meant so much to me that it's crazy. It's Adventure Time, for goodness sake. Okay, it was something that the Ice King said about, I don't know, it was very sad and stuff. Okay, but you can find meaning in SpongeBob. Really, you can. Awesome.
How does he do it?
Yes, exactly. How does he do it? Most stories share the same foundational themes. You just get different characters, different situations, etc. The typical story, the Hollywood story, follows some variation of the hero's journey. A nice little model you can use to plan out your story. Okay? Usually you've got your call to adventure, there's some supernatural stuff happening, the guardians are blocking the way, somebody helps, there are some challenges and temptations, suddenly a revelation. This is the part where Gandalf dies and gets up again, the death and rebirth. There's a transformation in the hero, there's atonement for something that the hero did wrong. Finally, somebody gives him some gifts and he gets back to where he wants. He goes to where he wants to go. This is also a nice way of seeing The Hobbit, not the movies, the book. There and back again. Okay, he starts on his adventure, blah, 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 and he's back again. Okay. So that's traditional storytelling, the stuff you'll see in Hollywood and so forth. Art films try to subvert or challenge the conventional storytelling construct. So they could be a little strange. Okay. But watching art films really introduces you to different ways in which you can tell a story. Maybe my personal favorite experiences in film have almost always been in an art film. Okay. One really, really good art film would be, for me specifically, it stars Keira Knightley and what's her face? I'll think of the name. No. Okay, so that's an art film. Never Let Me Go. That's the name. You can also watch 1 Hour Photos starring Robin Williams. Great art films. Okay. Short stories condense the typical story structure, but there's a single incident happening. And there are just a few characters dealing with it, and the intent is to evoke a single response from the audience. Okay. Once you have your story, you can broadly define it in terms of genres. Different genres represent a more specific variation of the typical story themes and structure. For example, if you choose the horror genre, you're probably going to use the affirmation that the situation cannot change ending. Have you seen the movie The Mist, based on Stephen King's, that ending? Yeah, that was a horrific ending. The best stories encompass several genres. In fact, it's not a good idea to start out thinking, I'm going to write a science fiction novel. Just write your story, and then afterwards you read it again and you decide, okay, this is probably a science fiction story. When I wrote Academonica, I didn't know what it was, I just wrote it. Okay? At the end of the day, it turns out it was a horror comedy, because there's lots of gore and some funny stuff as well. Okay. With elements of fantasy as well. Okay. How do you tell a good story? Think of a setting and a situation. That's the first thing you do. For example, once upon a time, there was a little kid running through an enchanted forest. So I have my first character and I have my environment, my setting. The situation is that the kid is lost in the forest. No matter which way the kid ran, he would always get back to the same place. Okay, there's the situation. So now obviously you want to see what the character is going to do. You're going to think about what kind of character this is. It's a kid. Okay? There's a short story, so there's not a lot of elaboration necessarily at this point of what the kid is about and what color his hair is and so on. Okay, so a kid would normally start crying, okay, or fall down and just give up, okay? So you think about how the characters will react and you just write what you see in your mind. Then you let events grow out of that situation. So now the next situation I'm dealing with is the kid is given up, he's lying on the floor, being shot in the forest, so what is happening? So then I think, okay, maybe I can introduce a new character. Suddenly an eagle flies down and grabs the little boy in its claws and takes it to its nest. The little boy, now you think of the reaction of your character again, your first character. The little boy is confused and, oh my word, what am I going to do? It's too high to jump down again, so I'm just trapped but in a different location. Okay, thankfully there aren't any other eggs, so you can't go with the whole birds eat the boy situation. Okay. Maybe you thought of eggs when you wrote the nest part, and then you could go that way if you really want to, but it's a little bit of a cliche. Okay, so the boy's in the nest, there's nothing else in the nest, the boy can't go anywhere, so the boy cries himself to sleep. Do not force your characters to follow a predefined plot. Don't think of the plot of your story before writing your story. Your story is going to grow out of the situations that follow from each other. Only after you've written your whole story, you're going to rewrite it and try and structure it a little bit more. You're going to coax out a structure, you're going to coax out the themes and what you were trying to say about it. We'll talk about that later on. Don't tell the viewers what is happening with a large bit of description, also called a wall of text, or some guy called, in Animaniacs they called him Mr. Exposition. In the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, that first mate of Captain Jack Sparrow, in the riverboat when they're rowing to the voodoo lady's house, then suddenly he has a story to tell. And then he kind of tells everything about what happened up to this point, and let's make sure the audience understands what we think they're stupid. Okay, so don't have Mr. Expositions. Don't have the screen suddenly go wavy and then 15 years ago. Don't do that either. You're probably going to have to, if you're doing that, start with the 15 years earlier and then later go to 15 years later. Okay. So no lots of dialogue, no walls of text, just natural humans or whatever characters interacting with each other. You're going to watch in your mind and on the piece of paper how your characters are going to evolve and then resolve or change or affirm the initial situation. You might be surprised. You might have thought this thing is going to go in this direction, it's going to end this way. But the characters you created didn't want to go that way. So they went their own way, and suddenly you have an ending that's like twice as good, and you just never thought of it beforehand.
So,
yes.
I'm wondering now is like what I'm thinking about is like Call of Duty 4,
yes.
where like you find out, oh, everything's okay, but then you like goes back in time. But like that sequence, it basically explains who he is, but like if that weren't there, like you wouldn't feel as intense about like, you know, that character.
I will tell you now how you can solve that problem. But first, talking about the ending quickly, it evolves from the situation. It could be how you expected or planned it, or it could be something else entirely. After you've written down your entire story, you rewrite it, and you coax out any themes and symbolism, if you can. So if you see throughout the story that you use a lot of birds flying about and picking up strange kids in the forest, then you could think of a theme that matches birds, maybe freedom, flight, okay? Which would work well with the fact that the kid is constantly trapped. Okay. Some symbolism, whatever. All right. You have to ask yourself at the end of the day, why did you write this story? What did you want to say with it? Usually you want to say something. For example, being trapped is bad, freedom is good. Okay? So you make sure after rereading and rewriting your story that that comes through. The reader is going to get that message. You don't put somebody at the end saying, the moral of the story is that freedom is good. Don't do that. Okay. During the rewrite, ensure that your intentions come across clearly. Don't be afraid to kill your darlings. It's a little phrase that we use in the storytelling community. You write a giant story, and you love every bit of it because you wrote it and you're awesome. But suddenly, you reread it and there's a subplot happening that doesn't really have anything to do with your main story. It doesn't tie into any of your themes. It's just a cool little side plot. But when you rewrite your story, you have to remove everything that's not the story. So you cut it, you remove it, you kill it. Maybe you can leave it somewhere on your writing desk to create a different new story from it. Okay. You can see during Stephen King's career, The Stand is a 5,000-page novel. Okay, there's a lot of stuff happening there that really doesn't need to be there. It's just this guy sat on this thing and it exploded, and suddenly they carry on with the main plot, and you're like, what was that? Okay. Stephen King's newer novels are about 300 pages, 300 to 500. He's learned to kill his darlings more often. Okay. Your setting and your characters did not appear out of thin air. All of them have a history. You don't just put a character there and it's a blank slate. Do never, never, ever use I have amnesia as your plot starting point. It works in very, very special situations, such as Planescape Torment. You played that. It's great. Play it. Everywhere else, it's sort of a cop-out. No character history. Great. Born Identity, it worked as well. But Born Identity was lucky. Okay? So they exist in a world that has a history. They themselves have a history. You're not going to be writing a chapter on the history of the world and the history of the character unless you're writing a 19-volume fantasy series, and how the world works is pretty important. Okay? But their history and the world's history is going to come out through the way they act. Okay? So when the character walks down the street, it's not just a cardboard cutout of the street. There's going to be graffiti on the walls. There's going to be dust and grime. There's going to be something that shows that this street has been lived in. It has a history. Your character might have a scar that you don't explain, but you know something happened to this character that gave him this scar. So you have some history. You only talk about the history if it has direct bearing on the story. So at the end of the day, you find out the character wanted to kill the villain because the villain gave him the scar. Then you're like, whoa, finally we know what the scar is for, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. It should be clear from your setting or character design that things happen to them before the current events. There's an example in Monkey Island, video game series. In Monkey Island 3, every time Guybrush sees a porcelain figurine, he goes, oh, awesome. Okay? And they never, ever explain that. So the whole reason for that is to see Guybrush as a person that is a real person who's had things happen to him before you started playing with him. You started... Okay, so you know that Guybrush has a phobia for porcelain. You don't know why, but it gives the character a bit of history. Okay. Now, going back to what you said about flashbacks and time travel and all that stuff. When you do reveal relevant backstory, if it's not relevant, don't put it in the story. You're not going to have a flashback, you're not going to have a wall of text. Sometimes it can't be avoided. I know that I am a hypocrite because in Academonica there are 2 wall of texts situations that I'm not proud of. Willem's monologuing is the biggest problem in this regard. You've seen that happen a million times. Okay? Why would they do that? The moment they have the hero, kill him! Don't start explaining and, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, and all that nonsense. You kill him. That's why you captured him, right? Okay, so if there is backstory, that needs to come through into your story, then you have to sneak it in. For example, it's relevant that your main character was a waitress before she became an adventurer. Then at some point, somebody could say, wow, you really cleaned up the camp really nicely. Where did you learn that? Then she just says, I was a waitress. That's it. You know, and then later on you could use that for some other reason. Okay, so that's how you sneak it in, through your dialogue, through your events. You don't start, let's go back 15 years and explain everything that happened. Okay, because then you redirect the audience's attention and they get bored or they lose the plot or something like that. Okay. When you write your first story, write something that you would read. Okay, if you don't read romantic comedies, then don't write them. You're going to suck at them at first. Imbue your story with your personal perspective. Everyone has an opinion on everything. Okay? So, say stuff that are stuff that you agree with. Okay? If you're not writing about something that you know much about, for example, if I were to write a police procedural, I'm not going to base all of my knowledge on CSI because obviously they take some liberties with how it actually works in the real world. So I'm going to find somebody, a real cop, to explain to me some of the things. I'm going to read some books in the library about how it works. Maybe visit a police station as a visitor and hopefully not get shot. Okay? And just look at how it actually works. Right. So if you don't know something about something, don't guess. Because the moment your reader's going to read it, and that reader is somebody who knows more than you about it, they're going to go, what? Oh, no match. Okay. You're going to do a lot of research when you are writing a story. Your environment, the kind of environment, situation, the kind of situations that happened before in history. But your research details are not relevant in the story itself. It only aids your story. You're writing a story, not an academic dissertation. You don't have to write something and then give a reference every time. Okay. You can find inspiration for fantastical places or crazy parts of nature that actually exist on this earth, scarily enough, like our ever-favorite deep-sea creatures. You can go to wtfevolution.tumblr.com and have a look at some pictures such as these. What is that? So you can, by looking at these things, you can get an idea for the kinds of creatures you can use, maybe if you're writing a fantasy story or something like that. Okay? That thing's just crazy weird. Okay, I don't know how it actually eats. Okay? That's a bird that kind of looks like tangerine, but has been destroyed by asteroid. I don't know. Maybe it's over here. Okay? Not so weird, but still weird. This thing, you don't want to step on that. And if you step on it, it's probably going to be very colorful little splat. Okay? That thing is hiding on the seabed, waiting for you to come along. And then when you pass, it's going to go. Okay? I recently saw a video of worms. Worms are currently the big thing in the deep sea creatures category. They lie on the seabed, they're like giant worms you can't even believe. Then this giant, huge fish, the ones with the little lantern, goes by and the worm just goes, and it goes back and it's gone. Okay.
How does the cameraman feel like seeing that? Like he has to keep the camera steady?
Yes. That shark has dental issues. But at least he can stick his nose in everyone's business. That's a happy clown blob. okay, which obviously will sting you and kill you if you come near it, probably. Okay? I don't know what I'm not going to try and imagine what this thing is supposed to be, but it looks interesting. That one looks like a guru of some kind, a sensei. Okay? This fish didn't get the memo when fish were supposed to be 3D. Okay? That's a bug. I don't know what this stuff is made of. It's weird. And when it flies, this is probably the wing, so it's all like... Okay, back to this guy. Okay, so look at those things if you want to have nightmares and find some inspiration. Okay, I don't think we're going to do the class exercise, but I'm going to just tell you, you can do it by yourself at home. See if you can write a little story in 15 minutes or so. You're going to think of a setting and a situation. I'm going to use my old example again. Enchanted forest. Boy is trapped in forest. You drop one or more basic characters in, I drop the boy in. Okay? You write down the events that follow as they pop into your head. Boy cries, goes to sleep. Eagle comes, picks up the boy, takes him to a nest, he's still trapped. Oh no, he goes to sleep again. Then, maybe, the eagle could return with fruit in its claws. And the boy wakes up and is like, wow, food! This eagle is actually trying to take care of me. That's pretty awesome. So the boy eats the fruit, and there's this montage of the kid growing up in the eagle's nest, eating fruit, and becoming Tarzan, but in eagle form. Okay? And then, you can think of an ending when you think you've reached your length. My ending that comes to mind when I think of that story is that the kid's coming of age event takes place. He has to leave the nest. So he spreads his wings, jumps off the nest, and plummets to his death on the forest floor. Okay, but if you are a less cynical person, you could think of something better. For example, the boy weaved wings from stuff that the eagle dropped in the nest and takes off and flies into the sky and he's free in the end. Okay, something like that. So you can try that for yourself. I recently created a new Facebook page called Status Stories, where I daily write stupid, little, crazy, ridiculous stories like these. Okay, so you can have a read if you are interested in crazy and absurdist humor. Okay, the more you practice this, as I have found, the easier it becomes. Okay, and later on, when you're writing stories for your multimedia products, you will be able to do so with little effort. Okay, that is that. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope that this will help you in any of your storytelling endeavors in the future. Okay, so whenever you're ready, you may go.